Welcome to the Balancing Ambitions podcast. I'm your host, Kim Menapace, and I'm here for a solo episode today to give you a big life update. It actually explains why I've had a big hiatus from posting, and everything will kind of come full circle around as we dive in here. So the big update I'd like to share with you, if you don't already know, is that I am running the Boston Marathon in 2026. So this has been a lifelong dream of mine that I'll go into exactly why it is, what my experience has been with the Boston Marathon, my whole life, honestly, and how I came about running it this year. I did not qualify through time. I am doing it through a charity. So we'll really get into all of that today. I found out 3 months ago, back in December, that I'd be getting a number for this race, and I've been fundraising since then. And it's for a charity that I've known for about 15 years, one that I worked with early in my career in marketing back in the day before I switched over into tech in the auto industry. Let's go back in time and understand where the Boston Marathon plays a part in my life. And that starts when I was a kid. I had aunts and uncles who would run the Boston Marathon or would join in and help a friend or another relative get through that last tough, grueling 6 miles of the race. So I remember being maybe a little bit older than a toddler and going to Cleveland Circle, one of the parts of the marathon in the last 6 miles, and watching my uncle run it, watching my aunt jump in to run the last few miles with him, and just really enjoying it. It's such a big event in the whole city that is truly special. And it's something that even as an adult, if I have the chance, I go and watch it live. At any point, I've gone to mile 2 and I've gone to mile 16 before to cheer people on, strangers and friends. And it just takes over the whole city. And when I watch it on, even on TV and see the elite runners go, I just get emotional as an endurance athlete. Who's done marathons before and just really enjoys those longer, grueling workouts. I'm much more of a distance runner than a sprinter, and I always have been. And I just find it remarkable with what the human body can do, what these people in particular are doing, that this is at my city. I was especially shooken up and emotional when there was the bombing attacks at the marathon back in 2013 as well. So it's just been something that's been special and had a place in my heart for a long time in my life, from when I was, like I said, just a little bit older than a toddler. So that was my first experience with the marathon, was my parents, my mom especially, bringing us to the race to watch it for strangers and family members. So fast forward to where I went to college. I went to Boston College, which is located along the marathon route, actually. It's at mile about 21, right after Heartbreak Hill, which is a grueling 3 miles of rolling hills close to the end of the race. So at Boston College, there's a campus school, which is a specialized private, publicly funded special education day school located right on campus in the Lynch School of Education building. So I learned that there was a group that would actually run to fundraise. I think it was $600 for the campus school, and there'd be a couple hundred of them. And when I saw that, I wanted to do that. So I observed it my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, I trained for the Boston Marathon with the campus school. And I got about 8 weeks into training, and I was limping around. I couldn't even put my feet off the bed and onto the floor from the first step of the day without pain. As soon as I swung my legs over and stood up, I could just feel the shocks of pain in my legs, especially my right shin. I was just limping all over campus. So that led me to go to the infirmary at school, which led me to the hospital to get test results done. So we did x-rays, we did bone density scans, and it turned out I had 4 stress fractures in my legs, shin, ankles. And so I could not run the race. I'll never forget laying on the x-ray machine and hearing those results and realizing I was not going to be running. Even with the pain, I just had that mindset that this was just a setback, something I have to work through and figure out, and then I'll be back to training. I never thought that a result of this would be I wouldn't be able to compete, period. I wouldn't be able to run the marathon. So that's before I found out about the bone density scan. And that confirmed that my levels for my bone density were halfway to osteoporosis. I had osteopenia at 19 years old. So that is very unusual. Usually you get your bone density scans when you're middle-aged or older, and that's where they're checking and typically see people with osteopenia, not a healthy 19-year-old. So you probably will ask, why do you have osteopenia? Why did I have osteopenia? And the reason was I had an eating disorder at the end of high school and into early college. I had always been a naturally thin person. And then when my metabolism slowed down and I started to fill out to a normal, healthy body weight, instead of being unusually skinny and not very um, healthy with my eating, I was very carb heavy, liked eating goldfish and bread, and just happened to be stay a stick for a long time without really trying. That just shook me up because that was part of my identity. So when I started to fill out and just be a normal average size, I freaked out and wanted to change that and get back to being stick skinny and stick thin. And I used it as a mechanism for perfectionism. I got straight A's. Did all the clubs. I did all the sports. I did newspaper, and I needed to look perfect as well. And I was no longer felt like I was looking my absolute best. So I dieted hard to start doing that. And I'd excessively exercise. I'd undereat, sometimes 800 calories a day, and be at the gym for 90 minutes, 2 hours a day. And that is why I had gotten such bad low density of my bones. And that was the year before. Freshman year is when it really came to a head. And people had brought this concern to me, loved ones of mine on campus, because I had friends from high school that went to BC with me. And I admitted it. I said, yeah, and I'm tired. I am so exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally from this disorder, and I was ready for change. And so I got help from a number of services on campus, a nutritionist, etc. And I thought I'd recovered, and I had recovered significantly. I wasn't relapsing to over-exercising and under-eating. I had worked with a trainer to put on muscle, and I had put on a lot of muscle and looked really healthy and felt really healthy. So that's why I thought my body was primed to do this. I didn't realize there was this invisible lasting effect that was still going on in my body and would go on probably for the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form. So that was a really enlightening moment. I'm really grateful I found out about the osteopenia at 19 so I could start taking measures to take care of my bone health while it was still recoverable before it starts to decline in your late 30s and beyond. So it was definitely a humbling moment that also made me scared to try to do the Boston Marathon again, or a marathon again. So that was my sophomore year. And then my junior year, I studied abroad in Paris, France, which was amazing and so fun. And that meant I wasn't on campus for the Boston Marathon that spring. So it was just a non issue, not something I had thought about. And then my senior year rolled around, and I was interested, but I was cautious. And I said, I don't want to get injured again. I'm just going to tell myself I'm not going to do the marathon and just do my own thing and work out like I normally do with strength and just conditioning. But I still had this nagging feeling as it got closer and closer and closer. And that spring, I had gone through a breakup. And on the weekend, I just went out for a run, and I ran to the Boston Garden, I think, not Common, the Boston Garden and back. And it was about a 9 or 10 mile run. And I used it as therapy to just get all my feelings out, and said, walk around the garden, get all your frustration, your sadness, your anger out. And then when you go back to campus, you're just going to release this. And I did. So that's when I got back, and I realized that that's where the group that was training and fundraising for the campus school was at that point in training where they were doing the 9 or 10 mile runs and then going up from there. So I knew I was conditioned to do the race. I said, okay, I can hop right in. I can do this 9 or 10 miles. I'm not behind in any way. So 8 weeks before the Boston Marathon, I jumped in and started training for it. And I did more workouts on the elliptical instead of a treadmill or outside, just to put some ease on my joints and my bones from my recovery from the couple years before. So I thought that was a good happy medium to still get that 9 miles in or that hour and a half in, but do it in a way that was putting less pressure on my body since I had such a compressed timeline. So in 8 weeks, I trained for the Boston Marathon. I fundraised the $600 easily for the campus school, and I ran the Boston Marathon in 4:07 unofficially as a bandit runner. Now, the Boston Marathon stopped allowing bandit runners after the bombings in 2013, but they would allow people who were unregistered to just start running after the registered runners with bibs actually went. So that's what we did. They just hold us back, and we'd start around 10:40, 10:45 after all the official runners went. So that was one of my favorite days of probably my entire life and of being on campus. If you look at photos, people snapped of me along the way. My parents checked on, were able to see me at multiple points before Boston College and then at Boston College. Friends had snapped photos. I'm just grinning ear to ear. I'm so excited. I gained momentum as I went. I had started running with friends, and a few of them just kind of pace slowed and we fell behind and separated. And I was just on my own for the last bit. And getting back to campus with just my foil blanket that I had was as my only badge of honor, because you don't get a medal when you're not a registered runner. I was just so, so happy and also so, so sore for the next few days. But to do that when I was also doing a grueling workload and curriculum at school, and to do it with 8 weeks of training and feeling such a 180 from the feelings of that breakup and wanting to move past that, it was one of those like unforgettable moments for me in my life, and one of those proudest moments I had of accomplishment like that. There's nothing comparing to that type of accomplishment. They say that less than 1% of people will ever complete a marathon. And I had done it as a college senior at 21 years old, and done it in 8 weeks of training, and not only any marathon, but the Boston Marathon. And I ran it in 4:07. So that was my big moment with doing it for the first time, but still unofficially. Next, I did do it again in 2011, and my first year out of college when I was just in the working world. And I actually ran New York that year as well in 2011. I had signed up for the lottery and I'd forgotten I had signed up. And so I get an email around the time of the marathon, the Boston Marathon, and they say, "Congrats, you got a number in New York." And I said, "Oh, okay, I guess I got to keep training so I can do the New York Marathon in November." So those were my 3 marathons. I did one other one that I don't talk about as much. It was a smaller one that was at a race for ultra marathons, and it was at nighttime in July in Boston, the Massachusetts area, which did not go as well. I'm not great at night running at night. I'm much more of a morning person. But those 3 big marathons, the Boston and New York, were some the highlights of my, I'd say, athletic career as a amateur, as an amateur athlete that just does this as a hobby. So that kind of concludes my marathon running in my 20s. So now let's fast forward to present day. Well, I wasn't running much, honestly. I did bodybuilding in 2018, then I had kids in 2019 and 2021, and I had been just consistently working out again the last few years, on doing yoga 10 minutes a day to start for 10 months straight. And then I started doing strength training and hiring a coach for that, a personal trainer, and then doing a combination of zone 2 training and strength training. And then the Boston Marathon idea of doing it officially started to creep up last year. Now, this came from 2 places. I do a lot of work in the mindset space and have been part of groups that help entrepreneurs grow their company, but you really need to start with yourself and your self-image and your mindset in order to grow your company. And I've learned that is so true in wanting to be a better mom, a better employee, in every facet of your life. It all starts with you and how you see yourself, how you treat yourself, how you treat others. So in that group, they had given us a challenge to write a bucket list, and it could be anything there. Like, I have swimming with dolphins is something I've always wanted to do and maybe feel embarrassed to admit to someone. And so Boston Marathon has always been one of those things in the back of my head where I said, I'll do that someday. I'll do it officially as a real runner that's not a bandit, that gets a medal and everything and gets the whole spiel and whole shebang with it. So that was one thing, is I had written that on my bucket list among many other items. And then the second thing, the other impetus, that other trigger that really caused me to take this seriously and say, why not now at 37? Why not 2026, that marathon? So my husband, he had a mindset call that he would run through these groups I was just mentioning. And I listened to the recording of one of his calls. And on that call, he had asked people what belief is, what is disbelief, and what would you do? What would you endeavor to do if you suspended disbelief for an entire year? What would you, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you try? And the loudest answer in my head was do the Boston Marathon. I'm not getting any younger. I am in pretty good physical shape and physical health right now. And I can do this as long as I prioritize the time. And I knew I had a fundraise because I wasn't going to run a qualifying time in such short notice. And it just was this calming voice in my head and this gut feeling in my body that said, now is the time. And I talked to him about it. I said, I was inspired by your call and I really want to seriously attempt the Boston Marathon and hire a running coach now. This was about April, May of 2025. And I want to run it for a charity. I know this charity I worked with a few jobs ago, many years ago. They have a couple bib numbers for it. And I'm going to approach them and ask them about their application process. I had already reached out a couple years earlier asking them, and I was just not in a place with my schedule, with working in my husband's business part-time to do it. So I ended up not applying that year, but I knew roughly when the timeline was, that it's about October that they take those applications. He, of course, was super, super supportive. And then I went to hire a coach through a Marathon Training Academy. Now, Marathon Training Academy had a podcast that I listened to back in 2011 when I did the Boston Marathon and the New York Marathon. So I went back to their site and saw they had grown substantially since then. They have, I think, over 20 coaches and just a really well-oiled machine, but still had that personal touch. So I submitted a inquiry form, got a call, expressed that I really wanted to still do cross training and strength training because I love those too. So I wanted someone who would be very supportive and great at programming for all the running, but also these other pieces too. So they paired me with my coach, Coach Cindy, who is absolutely amazing, a mom of 5. And we've been working together ever since then. That was the training piece where I was running 0 miles a week back in April 2025. And now I'm running 40 miles a week in March of 2026. And the marathon is about 6 weeks away right now. So that was the physical piece of it. Now for the charity number, this was a little bit of a saga. So it started out with my reaching out to Family Reach back in May last year and saying, hey, can you just confirm when you do the applications for the Boston Marathon? I am going to apply this year. And they said, hey, yes, it's in October. And also, we have numbers for the Falmouth Road Race in August. Now, this is a 7-mile race in the summer in Cape Cod, where I spent a lot of time in Cape Cod in the summer. So it seemed like a great kind of foray into racing again, into having a goal to run for instead of just this vague goal of, hey, I want to do the Boston Marathon in a year, but what are some of those milestones along the way to look forward to and also test my pacing? So I said, absolutely, I'll do it. And the fundraising is about $1,500 or $2,000. So definitely very manageable and reasonable in that time frame. So I joined their group. There was 8 of us that ran for the Falmouth Road Race. It was a gorgeous day, a little bit hot. People were passing out from heat stroke and stuff. So they've moved up the start time for this year. But I went into that race. I hadn't done a race. I can't even remember how long. I'm not a big 5K person or 10K person. And I just loved it. I ran a better time than I expected. And I was grinning ear to ear during it, after it. There's this photo where I'm just glowing, holding my daughter after the finish line. And I carried her for at least a mile to go to our car afterwards as she's falling asleep in my arms. I think that was truly the more physical test of the day rather than the race itself. But it was just, it really lit a fire within me with running. There's something primal about running where if I do a 3 mile run or more, I just get such this, endorphin high that more so than I do from biking, from strength training, from weights, anything else. I just think there's something innately, you know, like I said, primal in our bodies that just loves running and has this drive to run and move our bodies in that way. And so having this beautiful blessing and luxury of running 3, 4 days a week as part of my training has just been a really beautiful way to reconnect with that. I'm always been a runner. When I was a kid, I was very fast playing tag, street hockey, all those things with my brothers and the other neighborhood kids. And when I did sports in high school, I was, fast and had a really good engine. Had a lot of endurance in me. So that race really lit a fire in me. And so I decided to do a half marathon in the fall to test my pacing again, get that runner's high, get that fun challenge and test, and again, have another milestone along the way to train for. So I did the Cape Cod Half Marathon in October of 2025. And again, I beat my time. I beat it by 7 minutes, which was really cool. And I ran very smart and a very um, a great PR for my circumstances. I had never run a half marathon before. I'd actually only done full blown marathons before. I'd never done a half, which was kind of comical. And I was conservative about what my timing and pacing would be because I have been running everything in zone 2. And for people who aren't familiar with the heart rate zones, zone 2 is, just above that light walk where you can still talk and converse with people. You can still breathe through only your nose and not your mouth as you're running and training. But it's before you start getting into feeling like you're doing a little bit more of an effort and you can't breathe through your nose the whole workout anymore, or you can't talk to your friend anymore while you're running. So it started with me walking at 4 miles an hour in order to stay in zone 2. And now I'm actually running and able to do that, which has been great, but it's been very painfully slow for me. And I really wanted to have my zone 2 creep up faster than that. And so I just didn't know, with race day being a little bit more liberal with leaving it all out there, putting all of my energy and effort into it and leaving nothing on the table. I wasn't sure how much of a jump I was going to have between my very conservative training pacing and then my competition day kind of pacing was going to be. And I ended up executing, I'd say beautifully in my own words, where my first half of the race was faster than my zone 2, but still conservative, keeping some gas in the tank. And I think I ran around 10-30 mile splits. The second half, which was the hilly half, which was also similar to the 7 mile road race, it was the same town as the 7 mile Falmouth road race, that very hilly one. I ran 2 minutes faster per mile, 2 minutes faster. So I was running about 8.5 minute splits. And so 8.5 minute splits after already running 6-7 miles and also over hills. I was just such a high. I was so excited after holding back and restraining and restraining and restraining for all my training and for the first half of the race to just let it rip and go. And I was just, you see me in all the photos from like marathon photo for mile 3, for mile 7, for mile 12. I am grinning ear to ear again. There's just something then in my soul that just loves running. So that was the Cape Cod half. And I'll pick this up now to how did that lead to me getting a number with Family Reach Foundation, whom I ended up now fundraising for, and have been just so happy to really be folded into the family and the beautiful people that work at Family Reach that check in with us and give us fundraising suggestions and ideas and just that pep talk we need. And my running partner, Andrew, who's also in fundraising for Family Reach Foundation. So after those 2 races were under my belt, then very close to that race day, the numbers get posted, and Family Reach only got 2 charity numbers this year. Now, the year prior, they got 5. So the 5 runners had to fundraise 15 grand each. With them getting only 2, because it's just getting so competitive with so many people qualifying for the Boston Marathon, with so many charity runners, and so many charities having this be a huge moneymaker for them for the year, they said, hey, we have to make the minimum $20,000 for these 2 bibs. And that gave me pause. At first, I thought, oh, this is a good challenge. The universe is challenging me. And then I got scared and I held off on applying for a bit. And I mulled it over. I thought about applying for other charities to run for that had lower minimums. And ultimately, I had actually realized that I have over 1,000 Facebook friends, and say I were doing one of those other charities where it was only a $10,000 goal and minimum, if each of those Facebook friends only donated $10, I would hit my goal. So if I apply that same logic to $20,000, I'd hit my goal. I know 1,000 people. I work at a company with over 1,000 people where I've been for 10 years. I have over 1,000 Facebook friends from high school and college and study abroad and all walks of life. I have a huge network of people in my town that I've lived in for 10 years now. And so as I thought about that and said, hey, if I have a different type of campaign strategy where it's small amounts from big groups of people and just being able to connect with all these people from my past, and gain their support, and also share the knowledge and awareness of Family Reach Foundation, which I'll go into in a second, then this is just a beautiful opportunity that's unfolding for me. So I ended up applying for it and I got the number, and they said, we got to get to know you at the Falmouth Road Race. You and Andrew both ran for us there. We just couldn't, it didn't feel right to give this to anyone else. We have faith and believe in you that you're going to meet the minimum. A lot of other people were nervous to meet the minimum. And I was just over the moon ecstatic. I think it felt like maybe even happier than when I found out I was pregnant with a kid. Like, that's how happy I was to find out that I did get a number and I would do it. And I said, I'm not going to let you down. I got this. And I just was over the moon when I found out in early December. So that is how I got my number. Now I'll go into what Family Reach does and how I first came to find out about them. So Family Reach Foundation provides financial support for families to cover their basic living expenses when a loved one is going through cancer treatment. Now, what does that mean? That means their mortgage, their rent, their electric bill, their oil bill. What they find is people are making tough calls. One or both parents end up typically stop working when a loved one is going through cancer treatment. And then they're making tough choices. Do I pay for gas and parking at the hospital for the treatment? Or do I pay our oil bill? When is our heat going to get turned off if we don't pay it this month and next month? And people shouldn't have to be put into that position. And that's where Family Reach comes in, where they have an amazing financial resource center where it can help get you in touch with relief programs with Eversource, with National Grid, or you can get funds directly from them. So they're just an incredible organization. They've been around 30 years, but when I met them 15 years ago, they were still a small charity, and they still are relatively small comparatively. And 78 cents of every dollar donated to them goes directly to Families for Relief. That's what's also incredible, is they don't have a ton of overhead yet, and hopefully they can find the perfect balance to keep it that way. But your donations have such an impact because of that. So I just, in my heart, connected with this story. I helped create a video for their Giving Tuesday campaign back in, I think, 2011. And so it was the story of Shauna and Madison. Shauna was a single mom with a 2-year-old daughter who was going through cancer treatment for leukemia at Dana-Farber. So I helped produce that video, and I never forgot that. And I would check in occasionally and donate here and there. But it was really cool to see them grow, to see one of the women we interviewed from that video actually become the CEO of Family Reach Foundation. And so it was just this beautiful win-win-win all around with the charity that I felt that I could really speak to from the heart, for campaigning for them. And I could run my heart out in a race that I honestly, I'm going to tear up, that feel like I've been primed my whole life to do, where it's just something I've watched as a kid. I've run before. I was so sad when the bombings happened in 2013, and how now I get to run it as a mom with my two kids watching me, my supportive husband who's been there through all the training and how many hours I'm doing and all the campaigning I'm doing and texting my donation link to all his friends as well. It's just come really full circle. And I'm not even nervous at all for the race. That's the fun part. I say the marathon and the race day is actually the party. And so it's been such a beautiful journey. And I've stepped into being a different person along the way, of embracing a bit of a sales mentality, of a little bit more putting myself out there to fundraise, even if it can feel uncomfortable, because it's for something that's so much bigger than me. And I just get to be a vessel and a tool that gets to help this group along and this organization along. But it's really getting to benefit them. And it's just truly an honor and a blessing for me to be able to do this for them and to be a part of something so big. This might be a one and done in my lifetime, which makes it even more special, where I just don't take any day I get to train for granted, because I've been injured and sidelined before where I haven't been able to run, period. I tore a hamstring tendon right off my pelvic bone once and wasn't able to work out or run. I was on crutches for weeks and weeks right before my wedding. So I know what it's like to not have health, to not have my fitness. And so I look at these things all working so well and how good I feel and how I'm already over halfway to my fundraising goal as all just beautiful lessons in this journey that I've been on, that honestly felt like it came to me from a gut feeling. So thank you so much for listening. I will share the link for donating to this, but I'll share the link for donating to Family Reach Foundation as part of my marathon fundraiser. And I'm really honored that I got to share my full story around this, because the marathon has such a deeper meaning for me than just doing a race and checking a box off of my life goal. It really has to do with that journey from recovering from an eating disorder, perfectionism, to getting injured in college, to coming out of that on top and actually doing the marathon my senior year, having a long hiatus with my kids, having kids and everything, and then coming back full circle to actually doing this for me and for Family Reach Foundation, and with the support of so many beautiful people in my life that I've had the chance to go to school with, work with, from my current job, from past jobs, and family members and friends and everything in between. So thank you so much for listening. I look forward to more episodes, and enjoy doing this solo one with you and filling you in on such a special part of my life journey. So have a beautiful day, everyone.